Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, available on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That guy over there is Tim Dennis. Tim.
Yes.
We just aired our 6th episode of the Holzer Files on Travel Channel.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody keeps asking, what's your favorite episode? What's your favorite episode? What's coming up? I got to be honest with you. This past episode, when we were at Lambert Castle in New Jersey, goes down as one of my all-time favorite episodes. Out of all 10 that we filmed, this is definitely at the top 1 or 2 spot, because I know you've been watching as well as much of our audience.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I like that the show is taking a different direction. It's not always just the ghost of the week. We dig a little deeper. We're finding some interesting angles. And this story, this case was really bizarre, because Hans Holzer, try as he might, could never get to Lambert Castle. Something would always come up and interfere with his travels and interfere with him getting the ability to get to the castle. But he had been talking to Barbara David, who had been having these strange recurring dreams of the castle. And when she finally stepped on the property after 8 years of having dreams, not knowing about this location, floodgates of memories opened up to her. And she was baffled. She reached out to Hans Holzer. Hans was fascinated by this and pontificated that perhaps there was something more to this story, that it wasn't the ghosts of the castle calling out to Barbara David, that maybe there was an aspect of reincarnation involved in this story. And that really caught my attention, because obviously if you caught the episode, there was a lot of weird stuff going on. I mean, we were physically hearing footsteps, voices, a woman crying at one point. It was really kind of alarming and exciting and exhilarating. But then we took the concept to another level. You know, we could investigate the location, but it wasn't really giving us the answers. So we reached out to our guest that we have today joining us, and he has written a book called Past Lives, Journeys Revealed. He was the clinical hypnotherapist that joined us on that episode, and we're joined now by Damian Bertrand. Damian, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure, Dave. You know, working with you in New Jersey on the episode was fascinating. Learning more about your craft and your passion for what you do is really inspiring.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was great when we were able to actually get somebody to come in. I've got to be honest with you, Damian. I've been on the fence regarding hypnotherapy for a long time, and I see the possibilities. I've just always questioned, what are the probabilities? What could actually be done? And then, especially getting into the subtext of past life regression and trying to examine those concepts. Now, when you were called into this episode, how much, I don't recall, how much information did production give you about what we thought we were up against? Did you know much, or was it more about you, like a detective, trying to pick through and find out what needed to be uncovered?
Yeah, truth be told, I didn't know really anything about the castle, about the history, about Barbara, even, except that I did make a call to her, because I wanted to feel the energy between her and I before I flew from my home in Los Angeles all the way to Jersey to do the episode. You know, I really wanted to know, am I connecting with her? Is there something I feel I can get out of her that'll contribute to the story? And our initial phone call was amazing. You know, she's a wonderful person. She's got a great soul, great energy.
Yes.
And so I got some history from her. I got the feeling that she really needed the answers she was looking for as to her connection with this Lambert Castle. And so after that call, I called Jim, the producer of the show, and said, "Look, Jim, I feel good about it. I'm going to come down if you want me to come down this weekend and let's take a crack at it. And we did. And, I've been doing past life regressions now for about 17 years. And this was a pretty fascinating experience because she was a very difficult client to put under. I don't know if you remember, Dave, but I had to actually go through a process for about 45 minutes, which usually a process of induction through hypnotherapy would take maybe 8, 10, 12 minutes at the most. But she was maybe nervous, maybe a little bit resistant. But finally, she went under. And when she went under, she actually went to 3 past lives, which was really, really great. And so we got a little bit of information from each past life, but the third one was the one that really connected her to the Lambert Castle.
Well, now, for people, we're going to pull back the veil here a little bit. We emptied the castle. The cameras were set up, the remote cameras were set up, and we were gone. We did not want to interrupt. We did not want to cause any sounds that might rouse her from this, and it was a very echoey place. So there was nobody left in that building. We were all watching from a remote location as this experiment unfolded. And it was really, I was sitting there and I'm like, I want this show to be good. I so much want this show to be good. And I'm so skeptical of this past life stuff. And I want it to be real. If she goes right into being one of Kathalina Lambert's kids, I got to call BS on this. Did you have that kind of feeling as well? Because she did know about this now. She didn't know to what degree we would get information from her, but she was somebody who had been fascinated by the castle for 22 years and had been visiting it after, it took her 8 years to find it after her dreams started. But, it's been a part of her life for 12 years after that. Were you afraid that all of that information was going to taint the experience?
That's a good question. And I want to back up a little bit, Dave. What I want everybody to hear is I was the biggest skeptic as well. I started doing hypnosis and hypnotherapy as a tool to help people back then in the early 2000s, mainly to lose weight, to quit smoking, and to relieve anxiety. This is what I started. And at my practice, I had a lot of people that would ask me if I would do a past life regression. And it was about 3 years into it that I finally gave in and said, you know what, I'm going to try this. And my thought on it was, everyone's going to come back as a famous person. Everyone's going to come back as a hero. Everyone's going to come back as someone that mattered in history. And my first past life regression was with a woman in her 40s. And she came back as a simple person with a simple life, but that had a lot of tragedy in her life. And I thought, wow, that was just luck, I guess. So then I kept doing it. And the information I would get from people was not only, amazing to me, but really therapeutic for my clients. So I started to really think about it, and I pondered it for a long time. And I thought, well, this is still not something I want to do. But with multiple past life regressions, I got convinced that there was some truth to it. And I got convinced that you could really use this as a tool to help people. People always wonder, why am I the way I am today? Why do I have a hard time finding my true partner? Why am I stuck in this job I don't really like? Why can't I do something else? And with past life regression, you can understand who you were in a past life and the experiences that you had in that past life that actually shape who you are today. And with that information, you can make the changes you want. So, a lot of people also ask me, are you sure it's a past life? Well, I am sure because I've been doing this such a long time and I've had a lot of, wonderful experiences with it. But there is a possibility, and that possibility is what you just asked me. Could it be a repressed memory from some information she had heard in the past about the castle? Could it be a medium or a spirit or a ghost that comes through the person while under hypnosis that needs to speak at that very moment?
I never even considered that aspect, right? I mean, almost like an induced trance mediumship.
Correct. And I've gone back and forth over the years as to, is that a possibility? And to be honest with you, it could be. Because I've had a lot of experiences where under hypnosis, someone comes back and speaks for another person. So another soul needs to be expressed at that time and comes back through that person. You know, one of the interesting things that happened was about a year and a half ago, I had the only surviving victim of Ted Bundy, Rhonda Stapley. She asked me to do a past life regression on her, and it didn't go to the past life. What it actually did went back to the incident where she was attacked and, really, really brutally attacked by Ted Bundy, but she got away. And she's pretty well known, and she's written a book about it, and she's been on all kinds of shows about it.
Right, she was the girl in the sorority house, correct?
She was the one walking home from college.
Okay.
Up in Northern California, that Ted offered her a ride, brought her up to another location, and attacked her, raped her. I mean, it was just an awful series of events, but she was able to get away from him and survived. So what happened during this, while I was trying to do a past life regression, was that she actually went into the episode, which, by the way, she never remembered the details because she, for reasons to protect herself, her subconscious mind decided to block out the memories. Well, under hypnosis, she went back to the event, but actually spoke as Ted Bundy.
What?
Right.
Oh my God, Damian, what did that feel like? I mean, to have that had to be a complete and utter surprise to you.
It was a shock. It was a shock, but it was something that I had to continue to do. And the reason we did it was really to have her heal from it. Over the last, I think it was over 40 years ago that this happened to her. She's always had those memories in her subconscious mind, but her conscious mind wouldn't allow them to come to her. So she's always wondered, what happened? How did I run away? All these different questions. So imagine living without that knowledge for all those years, but knowing that something traumatic happened to you.
Do you think that this was not necessarily the spirit of Ted Bundy? Do you believe that this was 20, 25 years of her questioning, 20, 25 years of her thinking those moments through? Was this kind of like a dissociative memory or a fragment of her personality, almost like a Stockholm syndrome interior, mental Stockholm syndrome, where she was identifying with her attacker, and that's what was coming forward?
Yep, I think there's some truth to that. I think it was part release, where she had to just let it all out, and it was part reliving it in a protected environment, meaning that she was removed. Rhonda as a person was actually removed spiritually from it and overseeing the entire event as she spoke about it under hypnosis. So she wasn't having a feeling about it. It was just factually coming out.
Now, you, as somebody who's on the other side and wasn't even sure you believed in past life hypnotherapy, when you have something like this happen, what does that mean for you and for your practice and your beliefs going forward?
It's like over the last 15 years or so, I mean, I've been a full believer in past life regressions and the value of past life regressions. It's just a really powerful tool in order for someone to really understand the true self. I mean, Dave, if you think about it, even for the biggest skeptic, wouldn't it be great to believe that we've lived many other lives and that we can live more lives? I mean, is this really it? Are we here just for that, little speck of
fleeting
time?
Moment, right? Yeah.
Or are we a soul, which is energy, which cannot be destroyed, but can be reinvented?
Right. And that concept of these memories that we're having, this, these children that are coming forward with remarkable, detailed memories and insights to lives that they should have no knowledge of, that lived in different cultures, different areas, different states, different countries. And they're able to kind of come back with all of this remarkable information that is traceable. Now, when you were talking with Barbara David on our episode of the Holzer Files, and you took her back, and so, first she's Brunhilde, then she's a little boy, and, we sat there watching, and they had to truncate it because each one, so people know, each one of those sessions wasn't just, I'm Brunhilde. Okay, Brunhilde, go away. We need somebody else. I'm a little boy. Okay, go away, little boy. You spent time, 45 minutes almost on each one of these lives, kind of digging through to see if anything might shake loose. I love that you weren't pushing her quickly. And I was waiting for that. I was wondering, okay, is he going to lead her? You never did that. It was remarkable how you just allowed her story to evolve. And once it you walked her to its end, then you would take her into, where are we now? And then boom, she was a little boy, and she, could see this, she could see that. And then all of a sudden the reveal of the daughter of Kathalina Lambert was pretty astounding. Did it, were you kind of relieved that wasn't the first jump as well?
I was very interested in seeing what life would come out. And, I didn't know if any lives were going to come out or if any lives related to the Lambert Castle were going to come out. You never know. And the reason I don't lead the person that's being regressed ever is because I don't want to provide any kind of clues or false information or lead. I believe any life that comes out during a past life regression is a life that is intended to come out at that very time. I've had plenty of clients come to my office and say, what I'm looking for is to find out, who I was as part of this family in the 1800s. And I simply say, look, I can't tell you that that's what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to come out, but whatever comes out today needed to come out.
Do you think it was because we were peeling back, in the diary of her life, we were peeling back to aspects that needed to be recognized before we got to Belle, and that they felt that they needed to be validated and recognized as well? Again, I'm just trying to make sense of what seems like a nonsensical situation and in what years and how these lives come through. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I think they did need to come out. I think there's things that needed to be expressed in the two first past lives that came out during that session. I think those lives were as valid as the last life, and I think they needed to be expressed, and they needed to come out of her subconscious mind. You see, as you know, Dave, we're really two things as human beings. We're conscious and subconscious. And what people need to really understand is our subconscious mind is our emotion, is our feelings, is our memories. And those memories don't just mean in this lifetime. They mean in multiple past lifetimes. And so what we need to do, what I need to do as a hypnotherapist is to relax the conscious mind so that I can have access to the subconscious mind. And in general, as a hypnotherapist, if you're doing hypnotherapy to treat someone, that is when you're going to go into the subconscious mind and reframe the thinking. So as the administrator of 4 rehab centers here, drug and alcohol rehab centers here in California, what I use hypnotherapy for is to change negative-based behaviors that cause addiction into positive-based behaviors. And that's through leading and really training the mind. The mind is really just like a muscle, and you can train it in a positive way or in a negative way. But if you've gotten into a negative pattern, hypnotherapy is wonderful to change that pattern and make it a positive pattern. So that's when you would lead, and that's when you would actually give instruction to the mind to make changes. But to go back to your question with regression, I never want to lead. I simply ask questions. Who are you? What do you look like? Where are you? What year is it? These kinds of questions to start, to really let that soul come out and those memories of that soul express itself.
Now, when we were dealing with this case in particular, something, it was conveyed, but I felt that it wasn't even conveyed clearly on the episode, and that's not, slighting the episode at all. But it was hard to kind of capture. We didn't have somebody walking around with a microphone trying to capture the background ambience. At one point, when you're speaking with her and you ask her who she is, and she reveals that she thinks that she's the daughter of Kathalina Lambert, you heard something out loud, correct? What we call it direct voice phenomena. What did you hear?
I've got chills right now. Dave, I've got chills right now because that was an incredible moment. Here we are, total quiet set. I'm going into the third life, Kathalina Lambert life, the family. She's expressing herself at that moment, and I ask her a question about what family member or how she's related to the Lambert family. She answers. And from upstairs, I don't know if it was the second or third floor in that big hollow castle, we all heard the word no. And it was, they showed it for a moment on the episode. The episode was wonderful, but I thought they were going to do a lot more with that because at that moment, I am focused on the regression, just really in a different space, really a different headspace while I'm doing regressions. But I hear that. And it was a really long-winded no, and it sounded like a woman's voice. So I looked up, I looked back, and then I went back and focused on the regression. But there was a spirit there, there was a ghost there, something, an entity that was telling us, that was answering to her, and it was something, wasn't it?
It really was. And Shane and I were hearing footsteps and voices and sobbing at one point. It was unnerving, and they show that in the episode. You heard this. Now, have you ever been in a situation during hypnotherapy where you hear audible phenomena of what we would consider to be a ghost? Has that ever happened to you before?
It's never happened to me before. That was the first experience of its kind. I have had other spirits come through a person while under regression, as I mentioned earlier, but an external voice or sound, never heard that before. And I've thought about that often since that episode, since we filmed that a few months ago. That was just something else.
That I love the reaction afterwards when you came out to me and you said, Dave, we need to go back and check this audio because we could not hear it from the remote location as well. Of course, we were looking on a little monitor and we weren't hearing through the good speakers. But your reaction was so genuine, and I got to be honest with you, unnerving to see you. And not that you were rattled, but I could see that what happened impacted you, and it was very real, and that you heard this voice call out at an integral part of the hypnotherapy. That was a spectacular moment. I'm glad in a way, I'm glad on the show that they don't over sensationalize those moments either. But I wish it would have been maybe, we would have had a little bit more time to chat with you about that, because your honest response to that was pretty remarkable. And, you're in that castle. How do you not feel something going into a castle like that and kind of knowing a little bit of the history of what's been said to have happened and who you're interviewing there doing this regression with Barbara David, and then to have that kind of phenomena actually take place. I'm curious, in all the work that you've done, do you see the clients that are going through past life regression, do they physically change? Have you seen anything aside from perhaps a knitted brow when they're sad or upset or a frown? Have you seen any kind of other visual representation of them changing, as though maybe another face is there? I don't want to lead you, but I'm just curious if that's ever occurred.
There is subtle and not so subtle physical changes that happen when you're being regressed. One of the first things is obviously your body becomes very limber, the same way as when you fall asleep at night. your body actually kind of just loosens up and you fall into this other state. So that's the first thing that I see. And that's one of my cues that the person is going under hypnosis. But some of the really fascinating things that have happened are, if they're in an excited state, you can see some color come into their cheeks. If they're emotional, they'll go into, tears, and the tears will flow. But I've also had some really, really interesting things, like a full body takeover by a past life, where the person goes into these, almost spasms, where the physical body just contorts. It's really remarkable things.
In those moments when it's taking over, is it because the soul is looking for familiarity do you think it's because they have not inhabited a physical form in so long they're unable to figure out how, the workings of it again? It's a new sensation.
I think my belief on it is the fact that the soul is actually reliving the experience. And so it really takes over the physical body again and expresses itself.
You and I have had chats, and I love that you've been very open with me as different concepts hit me. I've written to you and you've responded. Could somebody theoretically be hypnotized while they're in a coma? If they're already in a sedate way, I've often wondered, could you make contact with a past life or the current life and try to bring the soul out of a coma? And the reason I ask that, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with this story, Damian, but Mel Blanc, the famous voice of Bugs Bunny in most of the Warner Brothers cartoons, suffered a massive accident and was put into a coma at one point in his life. And they weren't sure he was going to come out of it. And the doctors had been trying to get response from him. They couldn't. And one doctor had an idea, and he went up and leaned in and he said, "Mr. Blank, I'm wondering if Bugs Bunny is available to talk." When suddenly Mel Blanc's face twitched and then, "What's up, Doc?" came out of his mouth. And he began having a dialogue with Bugs Bunny, a different layer of the consciousness for Mel Blanc. And he was able to converse with them. Although Mel Blanc was still not present, these aspects of who he was would pop up. Now, that wasn't hypnotherapy, but I've wondered, have you ever tried or thought about applying that application to somebody in a coma to see if there's a way to bring them back out of it?
Well, I haven't, but I tell you, that story about Mel Blanc I'm a 100% believer in that story. Being in a coma or being sedated or even being asleep at night are all different levels of the subconscious mind being at work. When we talk about the subconscious mind, it is really 90% of our being. If you think of an iceberg, when you look at an iceberg, you only see the top of the iceberg outside the ocean. There's really about 90% of it underneath, making it float. Well, that's how I represent the conscious and the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is really that top layer that you can see outside the ocean. But underneath it, that's where all of your energy, all of your power, the memories I talked about earlier, your feelings, your emotions, all of that is what drives you, and then goes into that point of the iceberg, and that's how we express ourselves, by speaking. We don't actually think about speaking. Things just come out, but they come from our subconscious mind. So in a coma, in a dream, I mean, you've heard about people that sleepwalk, for example.
Right.
That's a different level of consciousness as well, and there's so much in our subconscious mind that I want researchers and studies to be done more and more and more on the subconscious mind and the power of it. I mean, hypnotherapy has been used for centuries, but really in the last 75, 80 years, a lot of studies have been done with hypnotherapy and trying to understand, what really drives us as a human being and where all this stuff comes from in our subconscious and how we can access it. Now, there's plenty of evidence that even though you may suffer an illness, a stroke, or so on, or even someone like Michael Schumacher, the Formula One driver that's been in a coma for years and years and years after a skiing accident, he still can communicate and understand when his family and loved ones talk to him. And so where do we go when we're in those states? It's a big question. And that's something that I'm always trying to find out.
If somebody was willing to give you access to a coma patient, would that be something you would ever consider doing and seeing if you could raise part of that consciousness back out into full awareness?
Oh, I would love to do that. Not on the same topic, but close. Is I have worked quite a bit with epileptic clients while under an episode. So they fall into a seizure, and as you speak to them and you try to get into the subconscious mind, you can actually bring them back from that seizure much, much quicker than if they were just left there on their own, showing you that really the subconscious mind is very powerful. Another thing that happened once was one of my clients, while under hypnotherapy about 15, 20 years ago, actually kind of fell off the chair and hit her face and started bleeding a little bit from the lip. And I basically grabbed her, sat her back up. She's still under hypnosis, spoke to her to have her lip stop bleeding, and it stopped bleeding.
All right. So then that shows the true healing properties of what we're physically capable of doing. I've spoken to people that will start to relate trauma to me and things that have happened and talking about physical abuse from their childhood. And Damian, I have physically seen bruises start to appear on the skin as though they're being grabbed or held. And what was intriguing to me is how big it appeared to be. And I couldn't understand it. I'm like, is this a ghost manipulating this friend of mine? Is this something torturing them? And then, I sat back and I thought, this handprint looks huge on her arm, but she was a very small child when this happened. Her father was huge. Could it be that her body memory is remembering it in a way of relating it to her childhood? So the handprint is still going to appear huge because that part of her psyche is still the part that's bruised.
I absolutely believe that. Physical manifestations from past traumas is something that is a phenomenon that really does happen. Not to everyone again, but it does happen. And some of us are just drawn and have instincts or intuition or talents that are different than others. I did study clinical hypnotherapy and I have a master's in it, but it's not something I ever really had to learn, to be honest with you. I was always drawn to it. And I kind of relate it to someone who can just grab a guitar, hear a song, and then start playing that song. Their subconscious mind is in tune with music. Mine is in tune with hypnotherapy. Yours is in tune from what I feel to the paranormal world.
Right. So we've all got these different aspects of what kind of lights us up and makes us available. So do you think that by going in and triggering different aspects, like with me having such a fascination with the paranormal, what do you think would be the possibility of you going in and opening up that third eye for me? Since I'm already kind of predisposed to belief and understanding, do you think that we could hypnotize somebody or plant that seed like you would to cessation for smoking or overeating or sexual addiction? Could you plant the seed to allow the brain to come to full fruition, to, experience ghost phenomena, to be mediumistic?
I think that if someone is open to it, I think we could help them grow that talent with hypnotherapy. I really do. I'd love to do a past life regression with you, Dave. Or I'd love to do hypnotherapy on you so you can really feel its power and its effect. I mean, that's probably the best way. When people, there's doubters out there, I don't believe in that. And, when they say that, I say, well, have you ever tried it? And it's always, no, I've never tried it. Well, I think they should try it. And one thing that you and I share and your listeners share is that most people don't believe in ghosts. Most people don't believe in paranormal activity. Most people don't believe in hypnotherapy until they're exposed to it.
Right. The skeptics are just believers that have yet to have their own experience, right?
Well said.
One of my favorite lines. Opening those vaults, and we'll have to figure something out next time I'm in in your neck of the woods. And if you're open to it, allow me to videotape it as well. We'll do that, because I've been, there are aspects of my personality I don't understand. I don't understand this overwhelming fear of death that I've had since I can remember. I literally remember being 4 and 5 years old, afraid to go to sleep because I might not be here the next day. And it wasn't the ego thing of childhood where, you kind of believe that when you close your eyes and go to sleep, the rest of the world shuts down until you wake up, and then it re-engages for your entertainment, which most people go through, right? Especially children. This was an overwhelming that, I'm going to be 52 next week. And I remember having this fear at the age of 4 or 5 years old. So I've been carrying this thing around for 47, 48 years with me. No understanding of why death is so terrifying to me. And, do you believe in instances like this, when you see a fear, people have believed, your fear of snakes is because you were killed by a snake. Your fear of water is because you drowned in a past life. Your fear of cars because you were killed in a car wreck. Is that a stretch to assume, or do you find that in your research and the work that you're doing that there is some validity to those claims?
At times there is. And I wonder if and when we do a past life on you, Dave, if something's going to come back where as a child you died, way too young, or even if you were an adult and you died, but it was a really painful death. And even as a child in this life, you're trying to protect yourself from experiencing that again. That remains to be seen. Just because, again, I never know what's going to come out when it's done, but it just makes me think, to what you said earlier about the children that come back with all of this knowledge and, data that they should just not have at that age, understanding mechanics, or even when they call a child a prodigy because he can grab, a piano and play Mozart at the age of 2.5 or 3. I mean, to me, those are clear signs of a past life experience where they were talented in those fields.
I want to ask you before we go too much further and your thoughts on this concept. All right. Could it be that child is really not the reincarnated version of Mozart? That if we are all resonating at certain frequencies, we're starting to get in the metaphysical woo-woo now, but could it be that child is resonating at the same frequency that Mozart's spirit did in life? So, like knowing the password to somebody's internet or database, you now get access to those photographs, the audio recordings, the videos, things that they lived. And could it be why, as they get older and the brain continues to form and grow, that it fades? Not that we've acknowledged it, now we can let go of it, but that's what's really taken place, and could be why 20 people believe they're Napoleon, because they're resonating with the frequency of what Napoleon was at a specific time.
That's where your background and my background kind of come to the same place, right? Because now we're talking about frequencies, and we're talking about spirits, and we're talking about memories and talents and experiences. So could it be? It could be. It really could be. My experience leads me to believe that they are truly past lives. That's my belief. But could it be? It could be.
Well, past lives, certainly. But past lives of Damian Bertrand, past lives of David Schrader, or are they past lives that exist, as you said, kind of working as a channel, that they're playing out through the frequency of Damian Bertrand, who's tuned into that channel today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've questioned that, so many times. I've wrestled with those thoughts so much because, like you and I being skeptics at first, I didn't want to believe it to be true. I wanted those clients, those first half dozen clients of mine, to come back as famous people, to prove to myself that I was correct. But they didn't, and the lives that they came back as, they were not wonderful lives by any means. They had real struggles. They had real loves, and they had real tragedy. And they also had real real unfortunate events that happened to them. That's what started convincing me that they were past lives. But the frequency aspect is a whole other aspect that is a possibility. I mean, we try to understand as best as we can, spirits and ghosts and souls and lives. But will we ever know the answer? I think the answer is no. I think what's good about that, though, is I think we're advancing as beings to be more open to understanding this. And I think the more we're open, the more we're going to learn.
I've got to take a quick break here. And we'll come back and discuss more with our guest, Damian Bertrand. We do have a link up to his book today. You can find it by looking on today's posting. So you can get a copy of his book in the second printing here, Past Lives, Journeys Revealed. That's available. We also have a link up to Damian's website so that you can follow along. And if you missed last week's episode of the Holzer Files, go back, check it out. Damian Bertrand, our special guest and hypnotherapist, as we examine the case of possible reincarnation. We'll talk more when we return. You're listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader. This is Beyond the Darkness. Tim.
Yes.
Oh, Tim.
Oh, yes.
Hey, I don't mean to interrupt you there. I see you're playing a game, not just any game either. You're playing Best Fiends, which has quickly become one of our favorite games.
That I am, yes. Yep.
I need to chat with you about this. This is something that, listen, I've got to be honest with you. I have not been a gamer in years. Mm-hmm. If all honesty prevails, Tim, I was there when Pong came out. I still have my Pong game. I was there for Atari 2600 when a video game cost $100 to purchase, Tim, for a cartridge of blocky, pixelated garbage, right? I was there for ColecoVision, Nintendo, and the Wii, Tim, and that's kind of where my experience has petered out.
Yeah,
you
might be a little behind, yeah.
I didn't do any of these other games. I didn't crush any candy. I didn't do any other strange things, Tim. But I did find Best Fiends. First of all, the name resonates with us. You know, it sounded like, well, what's this? And I spend so much time on airplanes and in airports, bored out of my gourd. I got to admit, I downloaded the game and I started to play it, and I love this game. I admit it. I love this game. I play it all the time. Obviously, you love it. You're playing it right now when we should be working. Focus on the damn job at hand, Tim. But I guess if you're gonna cheat on the show, it's a good way to cheat is with Best Fiends.
Oh, yes.
So, folks, if you're looking for a fun way to pass the time while you're still engaging your brain but enjoying some really breathtaking visuals and a cool story, your answer is Best Fiends. The characters are amazing. They're really a cool cacophony of different characters with different powers and special abilities. And you're putting them together, and there are these fun puzzles throughout the game as well. So you're kind of marrying these fun puzzles with these interesting characters. And the idea is finding the right blend of which characters to utilize in each puzzle to get through it the fastest and to score the most points. Best Fiends, though, it's a casual game that anybody can play. It's probably more made for adults, but it's open to a wide genre. And you can spend as much or as little time as you'd like in the game. It's not something that, if you put it down, you lose everything you've done. You can go back to the game, revisit it at any time. It's like sitting down with old friends. I like to say that because I love playing this game when I've got my downtime, which isn't often, but when I do, this is how you'll find me usually playing, whether it's on set at the Holzer Files, in between sets and takes, or whether it's here on the show or prepping in daily life, just having some 5 minutes to myself here and there. I play this game, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it as much as I do. I've been playing this. I'm on I think it's 362nd level, some insane level. I've been fun playing, and it's great because you can map it along with your friends. I'm tapped in through my Facebook, so I see the rest of you monkeys out there trying to catch me or surpassing me, and it only inspires me to go faster, to try harder, play a little longer. And my kids enjoy it. I enjoy it. You enjoy it. We have a lot of fun playing this game. So go check it out for yourselves. And when you compete with one another, it's a lot of fun, too, because I love when I wake up in the morning and I see Tim's 5, 6, 7 levels ahead of me. And by the end of the day, he's eating my dust. Maybe that's just my competitive nature, and perhaps Damian Bertrand needs to help me with that in hypnotherapy and knock out my wanton ability to crush Tim in every known sport known to man. But nonetheless, it's still a lot of fun. And the colors are bright. Visual style is awesome. And the characters, like I said, are fantastic. That's why this remains a 5-star rated game. It's the amazing characters, the challenging and fun puzzles. And here's what I'd like for you to do. Play along with Tim and I become part of this unique and exciting puzzle experience, which is unlike any other game that's out there. Best Fiends updates their game monthly with new levels and events, so it never gets old. And Best Fiends, they treat this game like a service to us, the players. It's not like they're, doing us a favor. We're doing them a favor playing it, and they continue to make it better week after week, month after month. And if you find yourself playing in random weird places, don't feel alone, because that's what Tim and I are doing as well. And you may never know. You may see us on that trip and that pathway as we pass you on the interactive maps. It does not require internet to play either, so it makes it perfect for traveling. You can play anywhere, plane, subway, the back of a Lyft or an Uber, and you can collect all these different characters, and each one is more fascinating than the next. Not only do you get great characters, but you can evolve them and teach them new skills and abilities so that you can continue to have fun playing this game. So engage your brain with fun puzzles, collect tons of amazing and cute characters on the 5-star rated mobile puzzle game with over 100 million downloads globally. Did you hear that? 100 million downloads globally. Download it free on the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. That's Friends without the R. Look up Best Fiends, Fiends. You'll enjoy the game as much as Tim and I. I am so excited to be welcoming Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson to the Podcast One family. Listen as Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, pours his soul into conversations with fascinating minds, celebrities, and athletes, along with his cosmic millennial sidekick and former NFLer Eben Britton. Kid Dynamite dives deep into the issues impacting us all today. This podcast will change the way you see the world. Check out their first 2 episodes featuring Evander Holyfield and Tip T.I. Harris. Don't miss Hotboxing with Mike Tyson every week on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Beyond the darkness.
We're back. Or did we ever leave? Maybe everything you just experienced was nothing but a hypnotic suggestion. Damian Bertrand, who's a clinical hypnotherapist, is here with us as we discuss his book, Past Lives, Journeys Revealed, and have a fascinating conversation about his work with us on the Holzer Files, which I hope we get to, if we go to a second season, Damian, I hope we can employ you again and have you come in and maybe do some more of this work, because I think there's a lot of things we may be misunderstanding in the field of paranormal that may go much deeper when it comes to kind of the communication of the soul.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think it's again, hypnotherapy is a powerful tool that can be used in some of the cases that you investigate.
I would be fascinated to know. I wonder what this would be like. There are some people that have twins that the twin does not make it, does not survive the birth, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder, and sometimes that twin that survives feels the presence with them at all times. I wonder if they absorb part of that. And boy, would that be an interesting experiment to start doodling around with, to see if that other spirit is connected to the physical form of the surviving twin and how they're experiencing life. Because some mediums and psychics have seen children that were miscarried or, stillbirth children, but they appear at an age where they should be theoretically at that age. So it makes me wonder if there's more of an emotional tie or connection. Do the spirits continue to live on in a different way? I don't know. I know you're a skeptic on a lot of this, but I start going down these rabbit holes, Damian, and it's hard to come back out of them, because I'm just so intrigued with the way the mind, body, soul works together, and knowing that I'm talking to a guy who can take me kind of through a journey into all three is pretty exciting. Are there different aspects of the paranormal you'd like to see hypnotherapy really kind of utilized in? Well,
what I really like about your show, Dave, and Cindy, what you guys do when Cindy gets into a house, and from what I understand, she doesn't get much information about the property, and she has to go there kind of dry to feel it. Is that correct?
Right. We don't tell her anything about the location.
Which is great. That's a really great aspect of your show, because then it's genuine. Everything that comes out, everything that she feels is genuine. And it's supposed to be felt at that moment as well for her. I'm sure of that. And I think that whenever there's a person that's looking for answers that they can't, see with their eyes, I think that's when hypnotherapy really comes in and can really play a role in helping understand. So for me, I'm really fascinated with the paranormal world. I'm really fascinated with what you do. I've had one experience with a spirit in my life. I've had one, though, which I feel really fortunate about. And it was years ago. I was alone in my condo up in Canada when I used to live there. And as I was up there, I saw myself come out of my body and look down on myself sleeping in my bed. And as I did that, I felt a hand rub itself on my back all the way up, and it gave me chills. And I felt that there was a reason for me, or for my soul, to leave my body at that moment when that hand struck my back. And at that point, I came back into my body and I went back to sleep. But it was an amazing experience. And there was a spirit in that apartment that night. What was fascinating about that condo that I had was it was actually in an old hospital. A hospital from the 1920s that they converted into these lofts. So I had bought the loft that was actually the recovery wing. It was on the second floor, and it was mostly all windows all around. And it was all built out of stone. And the stone was open and exposed on the inside too. But you had this energy in that place. And so if you think about how many souls were born there, how many souls were healed there, and how many souls died in that place, I mean, it was definitely haunted.
When you have done the regression therapy on people through your career, and how many cases would you say that you've done now?
That's a great question. I mean, wow, that's a great question. Let me try to guesstimate that. That would be something well over 1,000, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 regressions I've done. Something I've never thought of. That's a great question.
In all of those cases, in all of the lifetimes, have you ever come across anybody who believes that they were, or have you communicated with an alien past life?
No, I haven't. What a great experience that would be, and something I would love to try to work on.
How do you think that you would? How do you think you would walk somebody back to that aspect? I mean, if there's, it seems silly. Souls are souls. They should be able to traverse wherever they want to go. And I know there are many people who believe they are the reincarnated souls of aliens, but they're not the ones that intrigue me. It's the ones that you would stumble upon by accident, kind of like, with Barbara David, right? She's, in one sense, she's Brunhilde, then she's a little boy, then she's suddenly Belle, and she's making this connection. It would be more fascinating to me to see if there was a way to kind of inspire them to go to that realm. But how do you do that without front loading them or walking them through that and perhaps engaging the imagination?
Mm-hmm. And that's where, you wouldn't want to lead them to that. I mean, if that experience ever happened, it would have to happen organically. But the closest thing I can describe to you as far as like an alien or another galaxy is when you're in hypnotherapy and you're doing a regression, someone can either not go back to a past life, someone can go back to a past life, or there's another space in between. And that's exactly what I call it. I call it the in-between state. So the soul, I don't believe, goes from, Dave Schrader and then reincarnates immediately after Dave passes into, someone else. I believe there's an in-between state where the soul floats, grows, prepares itself. And when it's summoned, when it's time for the soul to come back, whether by choice or by necessity, the soul reincarnates. So that in-between state, I believe, is somewhere up there.
boy, if you do come across that, I'd love to hear that story, as I'm sure our listeners would, if the person is ever willing to come forward and share that. Are there people that come to you that treat this like a dirty little secret? Like, hey, I want to get this done, but I don't, I don't want to speak about it again. I want to just acknowledge it. Okay, we now know. Let's move on. Or do most people find a real fascination, and that's why they're coming to you to begin with? Or do you recommend this as a treatment form of, hey, maybe this isn't working, maybe we should try past life regression?
So most people are open to it that come to see me. Like 95% of the people want to speak about the experience. They don't want to just keep it to themselves. They really want to share. As far as a recommendation, yes. I mean, if I've worked with a client as a hypnotherapist for a while and there's no breakthrough and they're still stuck on an issue, I will recommend it to my clients. Are you interested in a past life regression? Would you want to do one? And if they say yes, because all I can do is ask. I would never want to push this kind of hypnotherapy on anyone. Someone has to want it. And once they go through the experience, almost always we find that the result is amazing, and the result really solves their issue. When I go back to things like anxiety or lack of self-esteem or lack of self-worth, past life regression is very powerful to overcome those kinds of ailments.
What about cases of possession? I've heard that hypnotherapists have encountered ghosts or even what appear to be demonic characters during hypnotic regression. Has that ever happened to you, whether it's in past life or just in trying to deal with an issue?
The closest thing to that's happened in my practice is when I do a past life regression and I go to a dark soul. When I get to a dark soul, the expressions, the physical reactions, and the energy in the room changes completely. It's really something I can't even describe.
How do you then put that genie back in the bottle? Once you've loosed the dark soul that once was Dave Schrader's energy from 500 years ago, might have been a serial killer or, an insane person. How do you know that when we put that away, it's gone for good and that it's not just hiding behind a partially propped open door ready to kind of relive?
Well, I think that soul needs to come out when it does through a past life regression. I think that everyone has lived many different kinds of lives. I think we've all come back as men. We've come back as women. I think we've come back and had early deaths and long lives. There's all kinds of experiences, but I think the soul needs to live through good and bad experiences so that it can grow, learn, and perfect itself. So even though if, say, Dave Schrader 500 years ago was a mass murderer, that life needed to happen for him to grow and become a better soul, a better person in this life. And your next life will be a combination of all those experiences in this life as well, which will make your soul even better next time.
What do you make then of the concepts of these soul circles, these lives that intersect lifetime after lifetime? Do you believe that that's a reality? And if so, can we break free from it so that, we're not always marrying the same people, whether, I'm the man this time and I was a woman last time or, whatever. I mean, should we try to break free of those soul circles? Is that something we can implant in the mind now through hypnotherapy so that when we are reborn, we can choose a different life path, separate from the beings that are in our life now?
I do believe we come back with the same circle of people until we work out our imperfections with those other souls, and then we can break free from it and move on. So I would never want to guide someone's soul, current soul, to not want to be around a similar soul or a familiar soul in another life. That needs to happen organically as well. I'll tell you an interesting story. There's a woman who I know, who's a client of mine, who dated a man for about 30 years, never got married, never had children, had a really up and down relationship. But she always felt he was her soulmate, and she just wouldn't let him go, and he wouldn't let her go. But they just really didn't get along. Nothing really tragic happened, but it was just not a good relationship. Well, when I did a past life regression on her, we found out that her on and off boyfriend was actually her son in a past life, and he had died way too young.
Okay.
And so there was some abandonment issues there. And that made her helped her understand that the relationship she had with this man off and on for 30 years was necessary. And it released all the anxiety she had about this man and about their relationship.
Yeah, boy, how do you move forward then knowing that the man you're in love with was once your son, right? Does she then get over that aspect of it, or is that still the heart wants what the heart wants?
Well, in this case, we're talking about love, unconditional love. And people do come back in different incarnations and different relationships with you. So it's very common for someone to come back as your mother, your father, your sister, your cousin, your best friend, your soulmate. You know, the soulmate is just such an important thing. Aren't we always searching for our soulmate? Don't we want to be with a person that you unconditionally love and they unconditionally love you back? I mean, this is something that all human beings are really looking for. We're looking for attachment. We're looking for connection. And so love is the most important thing. And it doesn't matter who they were to you in a past life. If they need to come back in this life in a different incarnation, it's for a reason.
Damian, I think you and I need a show where every week we're going to go explore different aspects of hypnotherapy and how we can utilize it to delve into the world of the paranormal, because here's something that just registered with me as well. Science is talking more and more about genetic memory, right?
Correct.
How we're having this. Is it possible to connect with the soul of my grandfather because I carry parts of his genetic DNA in me? You know, the souls of your great uncle, you know, because that part of the DNA strand is still a part of you. Could we connect and become a time-locked vessel for our own ancestors to come through? What do you think of an aspect like that with hypnotherapy?
I totally believe in that. I do believe that we have genetic memory in our cells. I do believe that the physical aspect is one part. I believe DNA is very important in explaining who we are today. I think there's the other part, which is the soul. And that's the part that I'm familiar with and work with. But as far as science, I mean, I'm glad that we're exploring this. I'm glad that we are trying to learn more about DNA and how it all connects and how we're all connected through DNA deep down. You know, just as we're all connected with our souls. And just as souls are out there floating, you know. Let me ask you a question, Dave. What do you think, and how do you explain ghosts? Why do they come back, and what's their purpose?
You know, to me, every one is a different story, and it's, you know, we've been finding that in filming the Holzer files. You know, I'd like to say that there's one tried and tested truth to this, but I don't think there is. You know, I didn't go into the episode at Lambert Castle assuming reincarnation, although going in and hearing Barbara David's words and digging deep into Hans Holzer's files, that was his thought too. Maybe we're dealing with reincarnation. He couldn't put his finger exactly on what the experience was, but that was an aspect of it. So, you know, are some ghosts, as we've assumed, tortured and, you know, hey, I've done some pretty crappy things in life. I'm really afraid to move on and be judged, so I'm just going to hang here. Are some ghosts like I would believe I would be? I can't fathom seeing myself going on without my children. You know, I would want to be here to see my children through and be there. But I don't know, you know, there's those concepts, and there's the concepts of what really is time and these things that we're encountering. Where do they come from? Are they really the souls of the dead, or are they living souls who are encountering our souls in the future? And we're sharing moments like that. So I don't know that I have any one specific answer to what a ghost is. And it seems to constantly be evolving and changing as I continue my journey in investigating these kind of claims.
And I bet you're learning all the time.
I try. You know, sometimes I end up more confounded than others. Like I said, even in having this conversation, it starts putting me on my heels with belief systems that I've held for a while. And, you know, the possibilities of what does this mean for the human experience and what can we do to maybe get more out of it. If our soul is meant to incarnate over and over again, should we be necessarily dabbling in the past lives, or, is there a better way to handle these moments? Do we need to know that this is where we came from in order to live a fuller, richer life here? Because does that ever, does that ever cross your plate as well? As, we're here now doing this life. By dinking around with the past lives, are we opening up something that maybe is better left forgotten or not known?
That's case by case. Past life regression isn't for everyone. Past life regression is for someone that is open and looking for answers. And yeah, it's case by case. I do strongly believe that time and space is not how we believe it is. I mean, I think we created this so that we could function as human beings. We need that 24-hour clock. We need that 7 days a week. We need that 30-day month, but that's not real. So
right,
when we go back into past, sorry, Dave, when we go back into past lives and we go back and explore time, as we call it, time, where are we really landing? These are the questions that I don't have the answers for. And the more we keep working and delving into that space, I think we're going to grow as people and try to understand it, hopefully one day.
All right. Now, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a few more of your cases, the ones that really fascinated you, and what about them stood out to you above, thousands of cases you've done, or 1,000 cases you've done. There's a lot of experiences in there that have had to have really kind of left you in shock or in awe. And have you ever been frightened by an experience of unleashing a darker personality? There's been so many different experiences, and having been doing this for so many years, you'd think that eventually nothing would surprise me, but it's the opposite. Every case is so unique. Every case is so different. The lessons learned from every soul is so fascinating to me. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing, and that's why I have such a passion for it. In the book Past Lives, Journeys Revealed, I actually feature 8 different cases. And those 8 cases were the ones that I decided to put in the book because they touched me in one way or the other. They gave answers to the people that were regressed and really changed their lives. Now, all the names, by the way, in the book have been changed for the client's privacy, but all the stories are real. They're genuine. And in fact, what's interesting is the producer of your show also produced a TV show with me that ran about 3 or 4 years ago that featured past life regressions and the outcome of those regressions. And true to his word, he did the same thing he's doing with you. He only used real material. So when you're doing these regressions and things come out, you don't need to change anything to make it interesting for a reader or for a viewer. Kind of like your show. I mean, it's all just so fascinating that you just present the facts. Over the years, the most touching stories for me were really stories of people that came back as children, people that found their soulmate, people that found purpose in a past life where they didn't think they had purpose in this life. So really empowered the people. That's the transformational changes that make my job worth doing. You seem very vested in your work, even watching you put Barbara through the paces on the episode. And again, they only give a flash, folks, of what he did to put Barbara DeVitt in to a state of hypnosis. Do you ever feel empathetically connected then to these people, the clients? And do you almost live the emotion with them as they're going through it?
I do. In fact, after every session, I have to do a cleanse, what I call a cleanse of the soul. I have to ground myself. I go into a really different space when I'm hypnotizing someone. Anyone could learn a script to hypnotize someone. But it's not about the words you say. It's about the energy you transfer. I have to connect with a client on a different level for them to go into a hypnotic state. And it takes an energy and some tools, I guess, inside of me that I can't really quantify or explain, but it's a real different space. I kind of go into a hypnotic space myself when I'm hypnotizing someone. And it does drain the soul as I'm doing it. But I do connect with everyone, and I do feel the energy matches and gets to a place where it connects, where the person goes under, and then the past life comes out at that point in time.
Do you ever cross people in a past life that you feel like you are almost maybe a part of their circle in a way?
Wow, that's a great question, Dave. That has never happened, but wow, the day it does, it's going to be a pretty interesting day.
If people come in and they have a hard time, they believe they can't be hypnotized, do they hypnotize themselves into a sense of not being able to hypnotize? Does that make sense? Or can you work around that?
Well, that's yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of people that have come to me in my practice and said, look, I'd love to do it, but I can't go under. It's not going to work. Kind of like Barbara David in the sense that it took me a long time to put her under. But eventually, if it's not in the first session, eventually everyone can and will be hypnotized. Basically, if you can fall asleep at night, if you can dream, you can access that energy, which means you can go into hypnosis. It's not much different than meditation in a way. So basically there is meditation, little lower is hypnosis, and the third level would be sleep. That's kind of where your brain and your mind and your soul go to. But to answer your question, if you're very resistant to it, then you're right, it won't work because I can't force you to be hypnotized. It's almost like falling asleep again at night. If you overthink it, or you're stressed, or your mind is wandering, it's very difficult to fall asleep.
Right, it certainly is. And getting through that mind chatter has got to be quite hard for you to do as well. That's part of my problem is I've always been afraid really trying to go in. I don't know how you're going to shut up the monkeys before we get to the important part, because there's so many things in my brain going at Mach speeds. I just am not sure how I would ever get through that. Is it a lot easier than people would expect?
It just depends on the person's openness and willingness to be hypnotized. Some people do have a lot of fear, though, of hypnosis, and some people don't understand what hypnosis is. They think that it's giving up their power. They think that it's against their religion. They think that it's someone's going to, invade their mind space. But really, it's none of the above. An ethical hypnotherapist is only going to work with you to make improvements in your life. And by no means does anyone ever really have control of you like a Manchurian candidate type of situation. It's more that you're still in full control of yourself, but you're allowing yourself to receive information. So at any point in time under hypnosis, someone could, if they weren't comfortable with the information, could basically wake up, like you do from a bad dream. If you're having a horrible experience or if you're about to die, the conscious mind comes back to you to protect yourself and brings you to an awakened state. Under hypnosis, it's the same thing.
What about the concept then of, in hypnosis, planting a seed to change time? And I don't know, maybe I need to pass the bong around and the Cheetos for this segment, Damian, but if time is not linear, and as you said, it's a construct that we create in order to measure certain things, could we impact or affect our own lifeline by implanting a hypnotic suggestion? Hey, Tim, you blew out your knee in that high school game, which kind of changed your life and put you onto a different path, and that's something that's always bothered you. Can we implant in the mind a message going back, strengthen that message so that when Tim hears, don't play today, could he possibly alter and not play today, which wouldn't blow out his knee, which would mean he lived a different life and bounced through a different set of principles? Or do you think, this is just too sci-fi?
I believe that in the current life, everything that happens to you is meant to happen to you and is the best experience that could ever happen to you. Every single thing. Whether you judge it as good or bad, it was meant to happen. And it's formed who you are today. Now, with the experiences that happen, how you react to those experiences will define who you become. So if Tim blew out his knee in high school, that was meant to happen, I believe. It changed him in a different way, but probably in a better way.
Right, but if that's the case, and I'm introducing this aspect, then what's to say that this wasn't meant to happen as well? I've learned that lesson. Now let me go back and re-alter it to see where we go from there. Like, those books we had when we were kids, Damian, the Choose Your Own Adventure. You read to page 5, and then it says, do you grab the vine and swing over the pit, or do you take an extra hour and a half to walk around the pit? Well, I swing around it. Well, the rope breaks, you fall into the hole and die. Now let's go examine what would have happened if you'd have walked around the pit. What if life is a choose your own adventure, and that we can flip the pages again? If we're conscious of life and conscious of time in a different manner than the constructs we formally feel pinned down by, I would think that if the mind is as powerful as it is, that the sheer mentioning of abuse as a child can raise bruises on an arm that nobody's touching, can bring back past lives. Why couldn't we affect or impact our own life in that way? And I guess then, taking it another step further, because this is all hypothetical, what I'm throwing out, and I know there's no one answer you can give me either way, but what about future life progressions? Have you ever considered taking somebody to the next level to see what they may be or who they may be next?
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's something I want to start exploring. That's something I'm actually been doing a lot of notes on, and I actually want to write a book once I have more research and experiences on. Future lives is something that I believe we're going to be able to access. And it's something that, I haven't done much work on yet, so I can't speak as an expert at all on that. But I definitely am with you on that, and I want that part of our field to keep growing and to keep being explored. I do believe that's a space-time concept. Again, it's something that I think is accessible. I haven't been able to find the way yet to access it, but I'm working on it.
Well, let's crack that nut together. I'd love to be a part of any of your experiments. And like I said, hopefully we will cross paths again in future seasons of Holzer Files should that possibility arise. Damian, thanks for coming on and playing the what if game with me and allowing me into your world to examine some of these concepts and maybe open the eyes of many of our listeners to the possibilities of hypnotherapy and what life really means. So thank you for being a part of this today.
Hey, you're welcome, Dave. It's been a pleasure, and keep doing what you're doing. You're an expert in what you do, and people really respect your work, and so do I.
Thank you so much. Tim and I both appreciate that. Past Lives, Journeys Revealed is the name of the book. There's a link to it on today's program. You can click that, follow through, and get all the information on our guest. And please do me a favor, folks, when you read the book, make sure that you rate and review the book, because that goes a long way to make sure that his word and cases get out there to more and more people. The more you rate and review the authors that you hear on this show, the better it is for them, and it continues to make them relevant in the field, and more people find the answers that they're seeking. So go check it out. You can go to darknessradio.com, click on the store tab. It'll take you into our Amazon shop. You can go in there and click and find books on our true crime show, our paranormal themed books. There's also some movies, DVDs, documentaries, and then presents and other paranormal style merchandise. You can find all in our shop, and by making a purchase through that, little bits go to help out in supporting of this show as well. So go check that out at darknessradio.com. Click on that store tab, and remember to follow me this week as the week continues into the strange and unusual. This is another week of fun, supernatural conversations on Midnight in the Desert. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific time. If you can't listen live, you can also subscribe to that program. Tim and I will be back with you on Tuesday, where we explore more true crime stories on the best in true crime talk radio. For Tim Dennis, I'm Dave Schrader. You've been listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is beyond the darkness.